All right, let's get right into it. Basically forever, we've been totally captivated by spider silk. I mean, it's one of nature's most mind-blowing creations. We all know the famous line, right? That it's pound for pound stronger than steel. But what we're got to see is that its real genius, well, it's a lot more complicated, and frankly, a lot more interesting than just raw strength.
So, the secret sauce to spider silk's incredible power? It's all in the structure. It's built from the bottom up, starting with these simple little amino acid chains that fold into really complex proteins. Then, these proteins assemble into tiny nanocrystals inside a flexible material, which then become fibrils, then fibers, and then, finally, the webs that we actually see. It's truly a masterclass in engineering at the nanoscale.
And this quote really hits the nail on the head. We always hear about how its strength exceeds steel, but the real keyword here is toughness. I mean, scientists are saying its toughness is what makes it superior to all other materials, and that includes some heavy hitters like Kevlar. So, what exactly is toughness?
Okay, so let's get into part one. What's the deal with this high-performance fiber? What really makes it so special, at a molecular level?
Right. So toughness isn't just about how hard you can pull on something before it breaks, it's about how much energy it can soak up. It's this beautiful combination of strength and flexibility. A great way to think about it is like a microscopic shock absorption system that's designed to take a huge hit, stretch way out, and spread that energy so it doesn't just snap. Now, this is where it gets really interesting when you start comparing spider silk to other stuff. This table shows something called Young's modulus, which is just a fancy scientific way to measure stiffness. The higher the number, the more rigid it is. Now look at that beryllium copper wire. It's off the charts at 116. Super stiff. You could bend it, but it would just snap. Spider silk, though, it finds this perfect sweet spot at 14.1. It's stiff enough to be strong, but it's got just enough give to absorb all that energy. It's a balance that other materials just can't seem to replicate. Which brings us to our next section. How in the world do you test a supermaterial like this? I mean, if silk is designed for high-speed impacts, like a bug flying full speed into a web, how do you actually measure that in a lab?
Yeah, just slowly pulling on a fiber until it breaks doesn't really tell you the whole story. To get what really makes it tough, you have to simulate a real-world impact. You've got to see how it acts when it gets hit with a sudden, incredibly fast force.
And this is how they do it. It's a pretty classic ballistic impact test. They take one single strand of silk, clamp it tight, and then they fire a tiny projectile at it from a gas gun. And the whole thing is captured by a high-speed camera that's filming at thousands of frames per second.
And wow, this image shows you exactly what that looks like. Now this is actually a nylon fiber here, but the physics are exactly the same. Each one of these frames is just 21 microseconds apart. You can literally see the shockwave traveling down the fiber as it stretches to soak up all the projectile's energy. This is what toughness looks like in extreme slow motion. It's amazing.
Okay, so this all leads to the obvious question, right? If this material is so incredible, why aren't we all wearing spider silk jackets and driving cars made out of it? Well, this brings us to the central challenge.
The answer is, well, it's surprisingly simple and a little brutal. Unlike silkworms, you just can't farm spiders. They're super territorial, and if you try to put a bunch of them together, they tend to eat each other. So yeah, that biological fact has made mass production pretty much impossible.
So that leads us to the next logical question, the one that has driven decades of research. If we can't get the silk from the spider, can we just build it ourselves?
And that brings us to the first really wild solution that scientists came up with, the genetic splice. The idea was simple, but also kind of audacious. If we can't use the spiders, maybe we can get another creature to do the hard work for us.
And I want you to meet dragon silk. Seriously, this process is straight out of a sci-fi movie. Scientists figured out the exact genes in a spider's DNA that were responsible for making its super strong dragline silk. Then, they used genetic engineering to literally insert that spider DNA right into silkworm eggs. The result? A totally new kind of silkworm that spins this hybrid silk that has some of those amazing spider-like properties.
So how does it actually stack up? Well, let's compare it to Kevlar, which you probably know from body armor. Now, in pure strength, Kevlar is stronger, 3 gigapascals versus Dragon Silk's 2. But look at the elasticity. This is the game changer. Kevlar is incredibly rigid. It only stretches about 3%. Dragon Silk, on the other hand, can stretch up to 40% before it breaks. That massive flexibility means it can absorb way more energy from an impact, which is exactly what you want.
And listen, this isn't just some weird experiment stuck in a lab. The US Army is actively testing Dragon Silk for the next generation of body armor. The whole idea is to create vests that are lighter, way more flexible, and maybe even better at stopping certain projectiles because they absorb the impact instead of just blocking it like a wall.
But what if we could go beyond just copying nature? What if we could actually design brand new silk proteins completely from scratch? This is where we get to the absolute cutting edge of material science.
So say hello to Silcome GPT. It's a generative AI. Think of it like the large language models you've heard of, but it's been trained specifically on the language of proteins. Its entire purpose is to figure out the fundamental rules that connect a protein's code to its real-world physical properties.
Here's how it works. First, you feed the model a huge data set of over 1,000 known spider silk proteins and all their physical properties. Then, the scientists can basically give it a shopping list. They can say, hey, I need a material with super high toughness, but only medium stiffness. And then the AI just goes to work, generating a completely new amino acid sequence that should, in theory, create a silk with those exact properties.
And the results so far are incredibly promising. I mean, look at this chart. It's a simple example where scientists asked the AI to design a silk with a specific target for toughness. The AI came up with a sequence, and when they predicted its properties, it was remarkably close to the goal. This means we're on the verge of designing materials for specific jobs, not just using whatever we can find in nature.
So, where does this all lead? Well, the ability to not just copy nature, but to custom design silk from the ground up, that unlocks some absolutely incredible potential.
And we're talking about so much more than just better body armor. Imagine medical sutures that are not only insanely strong but also just dissolve safely inside the body. Or think about scaffolds for growing new human tissues. We could see advanced systems for delivering drugs to very specific cells, or truly biodegradable fabrics, or even super lightweight parts for planes and spacecraft. The possibilities are just starting to unfold.
And this leaves us with a really fascinating thought to end on. For pretty much all of human history, we've been limited by the materials we could find or accidentally discover. But now, we are right on the edge of designing them from their most basic building blocks. So the question isn't really what can we build anymore. The real question is, what should we build? What's the next big problem we should solve?